Svartal snarled at the remaining clown beast, stumbling wounded towards the line of guards, before he expended the last of his magical power to shoot a cluster of magical bolts that slammed into it, stopping it dead in its tracks. "Any time now, sister," Svartal thought to himself, having an idea of how long the ritual would take. With perfect timing, the air shifted in the ritual circle as the magical arch began to materialize and expand, growing just enough to allow one person, plus a little extra through at a time, though the portal could be entered from both sides. "The portal is stable. Get the most heavily wounded out first." Had he not seen it with his own eyes, he would never have guessed the commanding tone coming from Svarti, almost like the voice was not her own. Her eyes were wide open now, glowing a golden white as she held the portal open, with one hand maintaining the spell, while leaning on her golden staff with the other. "You heard her! Move!" he heard Glenfarnex call out to her fellow healers, as they began to gather the wounded. "Red Legion! Help them carry anyone that can't move themselves!" he heard Luvia add to that, and saw his former fellow Legion aspirants hustle into action as Val, Pludru and several others picked up the closest wounded to the portal. "Prioritize the most injured first. They need immediate attention," Sigrun Barzum ordered, as she left the line of the Horde of Guards to give commands. "Anyone with healing abilities should go with them first. Anyone that can move but not fight, carry a wounded person with you. Do not block the path for others when you get to the other side. Spread out but don't wander off." Svartal held his position on the front line, using his drow-forged crossbow with deadly effect, as he did his part holding off the emboldened clowns, who somehow seemed to sense that their would-be victims were escaping through a portal. He kept looking back to check on his sister. Though she had closed her eyes again, she was still able to maintain the spell, with Tachika on her shoulder. The little creature seemed to do its best to direct the immediate people in their vicinity, but there were several others attempting to take charge, only Lucy deferring to the acting Barzum elder. It mattered not a bit to Svartal. The moment any of them fucked up and put his sister at risk, or the clowns broke through, he would blink to her and get her out of there, using the few seconds they would have to use the portal before the disruption of power would automatically shut it behind them. But for now, he kept his ears open, listening to what people were saying in between letting loose shots. Though he was ready to leave, they might as well save who they could, so he rallied anyone who could fight to him. After all, who else could he trust to defend his sister? "Sephi, you're needed over on the other side," he heard Phalas call out to Hawker, who was still plugged into the system defenses. "The medical droids are notifying us that it's not within school hours." "Damn it!" the Scritter spat as she got out. "There's still pockets of clowns still causing mayhem, and I've just seen Jack on the cameras. He looks like shit, and he's on his own." "He can handle himself," Nika replied decisively. "But we need you and the others on the other side." "On my way," Sephi called back, disconnecting from the system and rushing to the portal. The Kizan briefly stopped the short queue of people throwing the injured for Sephi to quickly slip through, before resuming within a few seconds. "Where are the others?" she heard the voice of Chio as she carried some people through with her power. "Alora and Dante already went through," Nika called back. "As should we," Chio pointed out. "My power is almost exhausted and you're hurt. After we get these people through, we're no longer needed here." "Alright," Nika shrugged. "High threat response will be here soon anyway, so they'll get to Jack and anyone still in there." "It's your call," Luvia called over to them from the wall. "I figured I might as well ride this battle out to the end. Let's go some drinks once this is over. My treat." "I think I've had enough for tonight," Chio replied, as she followed the line of bodies she was carrying. "Nika, Alora wants you to come help with the injured." "On my way," Nika groaned, as she joined the end of the line that was rapidly moving, urged on by Sigrun. "I'd hurry it up if I were you," Luvia warned, voice turning to worry. "Something's rolled the clowns something fierce." "You heard her," Sigrun called to the crowd as she readied her rifle. "Speed it up. Anyone that can't or won't fight, why are you still here?" Sparta was confident the clowns from within the complex were now mostly contained, so turned as the acting Hode of Elder approached him, What's the status on your magic? Sigrun asked without preamble. I'm not going to bother trying to convince you to go through the portal without your sister. But if you're out of spells, then it's going to be more difficult to cover the evacuation. Spartawolf thought to himself for a moment, considering something, before summoning a small green gemstone glowing with energy, quickly crushing it in his hand, and feeling the rush of stored magical energy return to him. He had been filling the power gem up all week in anticipation for another fight with Frost, and really didn't want to have to use it. That won't be a problem, Spartawolf sneered in annoyance. You had better make this worth my while once this is over. Just do your job and guard Sparta with your lives. Understood, Sigrun replied professionally. And to give you my word that you will be compensated. Like your clan gave their word that they would protect this place and their guests, Spartawolf thought, as he nodded in agreement, and slithered over to Svarti to check on her. She looked stable, with the staff taking most of the strain, but he knew that his sister's mind was in a state he didn't know if she could take. This will be over soon, he whispered, hoping Svarti could hear him, before he blinked to the wall. We can hold them, Master, Caro calmly told him, as his familiar landed on his shoulder. I overheard the Basm guards. A high-threat response team will arrive within a few minutes. Forgive me if that doesn't reassure me, Spartawolf growled, examining the force of clowns laying siege, before taking a quick intake of breath. Clown cannons, he called. Take them down! They're mine! He heard a voice from across the wall, as he saw Luvian Estix transform into a full draconic form and take flight, blanketing the battlefield with fire. Spartawolf wasted no time, as he cast a wilting fog at the bottom of the wall, ripping the moisture from the fresh surge of clowns that desperately tried to climb the chipped and damaged stone. They're shooting over the walls, he heard Sigrun call out. A bolt from Spartawolf's crossbow cut one down before it even hit the ground, as he blinked to the ground floor again. Caro, he called out. Use your power to highlight the hostiles as they come. Yes, Master, the familiar replied, as the flying dark shape suddenly glowed a dull orange, lighting them up for coordinated laser and plasma fire to bring them down. Hold on! Sigrun shouted to the defenders, as a low buzz could be heard in the distance, getting louder and louder with each passing moment. Those are reinforcements! Several of the defenders cheered, though that quickly turned to panic as the clowns were galvanized into one final push. Spartawolf quickly had his wand out and got ready to cast before something else took them out. A powerful bolt of fire zipped between all the clowns he could see on the ground, turning them to piles of ash as the defenders cheered once again, getting louder as several newly arrived shuttles began opening fire on the clowns on the outside that were now running away. But Spartawolf did not join them. As the smoke cleared, he cast a quick spell to enhance his vision, and his eyes went wide as a figure out of his nightmares strode amongst the destruction. He looked to the one that had cast the final spell to wipe out the clowns, as Devil's daughter marched up to his sister. Where did you get that? The Stygian demanded, aggressively pointing to the golden staff as Svarti backed away in fright. Your theft will not go unpunished. Svarti said nothing as she moved backwards, clearly afraid as she brought her staff up in a defensive stance while she fought to maintain the portal. Hey! Sigrun Basm called, raising her rifle at Devil's daughter, her host of guards hesitating before also doing the same. Back away! Leave her alone! Devil's daughter stopped walking forward and turned her head to look Sigrun right in the eyes. To her credit, the acting elder did not recoil. The killer clown has assaulted many locations tonight, but he has not done so alone, Devil's daughter patiently told the defenders. He has utilized third parties to soften and sabotage all throughout the city, and I have good reason to believe that this Nira and her brother are involved in the massacre tonight. Bullshit! Sigrun snapped back. All of us would be dead by now if not for them. Both Nira have been nothing short of heroic tonight. They opened the portal to get the wounded out, Sparti cast a barrier to keep the clowns at bay, and Spartawolf carved a path to safety and rescued many, including my little sister. A quite convenient alibi, Devil's Daughter replied, as she looked at Svarti, who had now shut her eyes tight to keep the portal active. But I have reason to believe that Dr. Reyes Grine is somewhere within the facility. He has recently met with House Malkar, a noble drow family to which both these Nira are aligned. The conclusion is obvious. Caro, get into position over there, Svartal ordered his familiar over their telepathic link. He had taken advantage of the chaos to move along the wall within Devil's Daughter's blind spot, ready to strike. He could see many curious faces and gazes from the other side of the portal, wanting to see what was happening. A serious charge, Sigrun acknowledged with narrow eyes, ignoring her guards that were slowly standing down. We don't currently have access to camera logs, but we will once the battle is over. However, even if Dr. Grine is confirmed to be involved, that does not mean the Nira are complicit. But you understand why I am here, Devil's Daughter replied, more as a statement than a question. Of course, Sigrun nodded. Your reputation speaks for itself. We will conduct an investigation and cooperate with you once the battle is over. However, both Nira are under our protection until that time. Our clan honor demands it. No. The Stygian regretfully shook her head. Time is of the essence, and I need answers. I am sorry. She quickly slammed her staff on the ground, knocking the Hodov back in a shockwave before walking towards a frightened Svarti. Caro! Svartal immediately yelled out loud. Devil's Daughter quickly looked in the noise, before Caro sent a weak shot of molten rock from the side, immediately disappearing after Devil's Daughter effortlessly blocked the distraction. Sparta wasted no time in blinking between Devil's Daughter and Svarti before the former could react, casting a quick gust of wind that was just strong enough to send Svarti shooting through the portal to be caught by the observers on the other side. The portal closed just as Svartal leveled a powerful wand at the Stygian that made the mistake of threatening his sister. The Vigilante was quick to respond to the threat, holding up her staff and ready to attack, but cautiously holding back, not knowing what spell Svartal's wand was attuned to. Excellent, Devil's Daughter sneered at him. I knew that bait would lure you out. Out of the two of you, you were the one I was really hoping to meet tonight. I'm honored, Spartal mocked. I wouldn't be if I were you, scum, Devil's Daughter quickly retorted, a hint of anger breaking her calm facade as she circled to the side. Spartal slowly mirroring her movements. I know you and the Drow are involved in tonight's attack. Clearly the scent of brimstone has clouded your logic, Devil Spawn, Spartal growled back, still mocking Devil's Daughter, as he awaited any possible opening he could exploit. I have likely slain more clowns tonight than any other, and few either have the power or the stupidity to come to an accord with the killer clown. I know Dr. Grine has reached an agreement with them, based on his activities tonight, Devil's Daughter countered. And I recognize his handiwork when I ran into House Malkar Special Forces last night, trying to kill the human. I had wondered if you actually encountered Frost. Svartal gave a slight grin at being correct in his assumption. A disappointing result all around, considering both of you are still alive. But I had advised the Drow that striking while they were in the Pallet Pit was a bad idea, even if Isadora was able to trace him to the slicer they used, using the outsider's blood. A shame my advice was ignored. Fortunate that Grine's abominations were destroyed along with the Drow, the Stygian jeered. But though I know at least what the Drow gained from this exchange, I can only speculate at what Grine stood to gain. I think the payment was you helping him tonight. Svartal scoffed. Nothing was gained. The Malkars wanted to coordinate with him to kill the human, nothing more. Grine refused because he's coming for you. They paid for some bioweapons and called it a day. Such a believable story. Devil's Daughter mocked Spartal as she continued to circle him. Did you have a tea party with him too? Why don't you ask Grine yourself next time you see him? Spartal growled back. If he's in the facility as you say, then shouldn't you be having this conversation with him? He saw Devil's Daughter's face twitch slightly. and that set off alarm bells in his mind. Ah, you're here for an ulterior motive, Spartaw snarled. How hypocritical, accusing myself and House Malkar of plotting something nefarious, when clearly you are too. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You devil spawn should never be taken at face value after all, constantly holding yourself aloof from the crimes of your people. Even without a demon lord to serve, your kind are still conniving filth that should have been cleansed from the galaxy when we had the chance to do so. Devil's daughter's eyes narrowed in hatred. Last time, she growled. You will tell me what you know of your own free will, or I will rip it from your mind with your life. You threatened my sister, devil's whore. Spartaw spat back. Come and try it! That's enough! Sigrun yelled at the two of them, as she and several of her horde of guards had all recovered from the knockback and were pointing their rifles at the both of them. Both of you stand down. There's still pockets of resistance in the complex, and I need both of you. Neither of them heeded the order, eyes focused on the other, killing intent clear to see. Make your choice, Devil's daughter retorted to the Hodov. Trust me when I say this piece of shit is not worth protecting. I said nothing about needing protection, Spartaw growled in anger, as he and Devil's daughter continued to circle one another. Scalp! Spartaw made the first move, as a knife of glass shot out from his dimensional rift from behind the Stygian warlock, Caro having been waiting in position for the right moment. Devil's daughter's eyes widened as the destructive enchantments breached her magical shields and smacked into her back, throwing her off guard as Spartaw jabbed forward with his wand, with his spell fully prepared. Boriah! The cone of icy wind blasted Devil's daughter back and battered at her shields as she adjusted her footing and began counterspelling, summoning Hellfire to stave away the worst of the frost spell. It was a powerful attack that lapped at the Stygian's exposed forearms despite her magical shielding. Grunting with effort, the warlock moved her arms and blasted the source of the frost with a powerful strike of her own, lashing out with a ray of Hellfire. It melted the frost that had gathered and smacked into the nearer, only for the illusion of Spartaw to puff out of existence as the attack melted the rock behind. I shouldn't be surprised that a bigot like you would learn of my species' weakness to ice, Devil's daughter spat. You think you're the first person to try it on me? I'll be the first to kill you with it, Spartaw's voice hissed out. What's going on here? A new voice called out. It was an older Hodov at the head of a squad of heavily armed Clan Barzum soldiers in power armor, supported by several battle mechs that had just landed out of a dropship. Several other craft were hovering nearby, with small teams of heavily armed and armored figures quickly rappelling to the ground, before breaking off and sprinting through the gates. Grandfather! Sigrun Barzum called, having moved well out of the way the moment the fight began, her guards dutifully behind her. Don't get involved with those two. I'll explain later. Right now we need to clear the caverns. I've got confirmation of heavily wounded that need immediate medical attention. You heard her! Clear the tunnels and stay out of the way of the fight! The Elder called out to his soldiers. Wipe out the clowns and get those kids to safety! What's the matter, coward? I thought you wanted to fight me, Devil's daughter called into the night. You can't hide from me behind simple illusions. He's invisible. Has to be. The decoys are too obvious. She thought to herself. I need to be cautious. He's even silenced himself so I can't detect him by sound. But fortunately there are other ways to see. Getting into cover and casting an enchantment, her vision suddenly became much clearer and more defined, as if the stonework and various objects had been sculpted to perfection by an artist. The decoys of Spartaw soon made themselves clear, as the true sight highlighted them all, and interestingly, the Nera had taken the place of one of them, and hadn't gone invisible at all. Just what was he trying to do? He was a lot more restrained than she thought he would be if they ever came to blows. It was then she spotted more of the same glass knives, scattered along the ground. Scalp! Spartaw yelled, as another knife went flying. This time, the Stygian brought her staff up and summoned an active shield of hard flame that was able to absorb the blow. But when she looked back to Spartaw, she saw another illusion. Was he able to swap between them that fast? You want me to go all out, you evil bastard? Fine by me! You get what the hell you deserve. Keeping several illusions within her line of sight, Devil's Daughter thrust an arm out, as several missiles of crimson light shot out from each of her fingertips, each blasting out and ripping through an illusion with a puff of smoke. Though with the last one, she saw Spartaw quickly dodge. Got you, she thought to herself. Making a motion with her hand, she stopped the scorching ray in midair and reversed the direction, careful not to grin, as she heard the nearer curse as it smacked into his back and blasted him off the wall to fall to the ground. Her relation turned to concern as his falling speed slowed down and she brought her arms up, conjuring a wall of rock from the floor as two powerful crossbow bolts came shooting towards her, the earth only just halting the bolts as the drow-forged tips pierced through the rock to glint against the red light of her magic. Grunting with effort, Devil's Daughter launched the wall at Spartaw's last known position at high speed, before it was blasted to smithereens by a fireball. The Stygian quickly covered her face with her hands to shield her eyes from the backblast, before she prepared to unleash another spell. Scalp! Spartaw called out from the side, and Devil's Daughter barely reacted in time, as a knife came flying in from the opposite direction, actively reinforcing her magical shielding to deflect the blade. Suddenly, a hot rock came flying at her from above. Her shield still held for the most part, but she still staggered back with the force of the attack. That damn familiar! How did he manage to bind and shape a corvid of all things? Never mind, I know how to even the odds. Bringing forth as much power as she dared, Devil's Daughter waved her hands and quickly chanted as she summoned the demon she had currently bound to her essence, planting her hand on the floor to open the portals all around her and unleash her legion. Though their numbers were reduced in the fight with the Killer Clown and the assault on the Pallid Pit, she had enough to fight one Nira and his familiar. She could just take the time to bind some more demons later, on a quieter night. Many loud roars echoed all throughout the courtyard, as several summoning circles spontaneously appeared along the ground, with monstrous clawed hands grasping out of the earth. Caro! Spartaw called, as his familiar intercepted one that leapt up and charged at him, slamming into its side with high force, cracking like a thunderbolt, digging its talons into the beast as it roared in pain. But suddenly, another demon appeared, then another, then another. Get out of there, Spartaw mentally ordered Caro, as several of the beasts converged on the familiar, who only just managed to zip upwards as the Nira took advantage of the densely packed demons, quickly waving his arms and articulating the arcane tongue of a powerful spell. Naharaja! Spartaw growled out, shooting his arms out as a spray of wild, chaotic elemental power ripped out at the demons that had gone for Caro. Some had barely been touched, as ripples of fire were easily shaken off, but others had been struck dead on the spot, ripped apart by force, scorched by acid, melted by electricity, or torn to shreds by shards of rock and metal. Other wild effects had clearly taken their toll on the demons, though by what exactly even Spartaw couldn't tell. Such was the nature of the pandemonium he had unleashed. Yet he couldn't sit idle, as yet more demons began tearing themselves free of their summoning circles. He needed to do something, now. With a clawed finger, he subtly touched a ring on the same hand to activate the active power. A simple band of steel, inscribed with light blue script, the words glowed as it quickly sprayed out a mist of mildly cold water vapour in all directions around him, and Spartaw quickly slithered and blinked around to carpet the battlefield in a thick cloud that obscured his presence, even with the true sight of Devil's Daughter. He allowed himself a grin as he began subtly casting a spell of his own to shift things in his favour, articulating the words in his mind so he didn't reveal his position. The ring he had used was more sentimental than useful. A younger Spartaw had crafted it all by himself, with the idea of being able to extinguish fires in an emergency, and maybe prank the few friends he had made at that age. It was the first magical item he created, and though his father beat and berated him for such a foolish waste of magical resources, he was still proud of his achievement. Especially now, for this. "Are you alright, Caro?" he telepathically asked his familiar, multitasking as he finished the spell from muscle memory. "Yes, Master, if a little wet. I'm out of range." "Good," Spartawl acknowledged, as he threw his arms out wide, letting loose a fine powder that scattered all around, and sticking to anything it could. The dust particles then glowing bright and twinkling like glitter in the mist. Though much of it had clung to the floor, enough of it had hit the monsters all around them to light them up and reveal their presence. Sneaking up as quietly as he could, Spartawl got the drop on the nearest beast and stabbed it through the back and twisted, sending it spasming to the ground before it knew what struck it, his magical sword having sliced through it like it was made of cheese. Caro also pounced on another from high above, using his supernaturally honed razor-sharp talons to rip into the beast's skull before darting away in a hit-and-run attack. Suddenly, powerful gusts of wind ripped around them as the mist and glitter dust began to clear. Devil's Daughter would not be so easily countered. Using the rapidly disappearing water vapor in the air, Spartawl let loose a burst of frost that clung to the demons around him, freezing a few of the closest ones solid, while doing significant damage to many of the others. "Master, behind you!" Caro called out. As through their empathic link, the Nera could tell what kind of attack was coming. Crossing his arms, Spartawl took the ray of Hellfire full force, as he growled the enchantment that would activate all of his powerful magical shields. He roared in agony as the power overwhelmed him, the deafening roar of sound screaming all around him. This was the same attack that turned Little Miss Massacre into a stain on the ground, and Spartawl threw all of his power into his magical defense, shutting his eyes as he did so, knowing that he was dead if he couldn't pull this off. He had to hold on. A strong opponent, Devil's Daughter thought to herself, as she hit the Nera directly with her most powerful magical attack, a ray of sheer, unfiltered hellfire that melted the rocky ground between them. "I have no respect for you as a person in the slightest, but I can respect your skill. You have no idea how much I've wanted to do this for so long. This is exactly what you deserve for everything you've..." "What?" As the beam of power ended and the smoke cleared, Devil's Daughter's eyes widened as she saw Spartawl still alive. He was hurt, and badly too, but as his form smouldered he shook with laboured, pained breaths. Many of his scales had cracked and blackened, but he was still standing, as he looked at Devil's Daughter with sheer hatred. "My turn," he growled. Barely reacting in time, Devil's Daughter was taken by surprise as he blinked right up to her and lashed out with both hands, crackling with red energy, and being halted by her magical barrier. Recognizing the danger, Devil's Daughter put as much magical power as she could into her own magical barrier, as Spartawl unleashed all the magical energy he had just absorbed and stored up from her Hellfire ray. With a loud crack of overcharged arcane energy, both combatants were sent flying away from each other, Devil's Daughter smacking hard into the back wall, while Spartawl skidded along the floor in a tumble. Spartawl got up first, and quickly began casting his most powerful spell, ready to unleash a force blast that could rip anything apart. "Shriek!" Spartawl yelled, launching a bolt of blue light that would obliterate the Stygian. Beating him to it, however, Devil's Daughter blinked away just in time before she quickly thrust out with her wand, sending a cloud of yellowish-green fog that blanketed the space between them. The poisonous cloud was unlikely to overpower the Nera, but it would likely delay him enough for her to start recharging her shields, while her demons would hopefully destroy him. She dodged a dive from the familiar, quickly countering with a strong blast of yellow energy that was powerful enough to paralyze the Corvid and send it crashing down to thump against the wall. Cursing in the back of her mind at the loss of so many bound demons, she ordered the rest of them to mob the Nera, but was stalled as several of the front hellhounds slipped on the greasy black substance on the ground he had sprayed between them. "Tear liquor! Spartaw yelled, as he pointed his wand at the most clustered group of demons and shot out a globe of acid that exploded, sending out a hissing spray of liquid that made the demons howl in torment, before he turned to the other group and resummoned his crossbow, and shot the remaining two. Though the shots were not killing blows, the bolts had some kind of weakening enchantment that sent the two demons crashing to the ground, too tired to continue moving. Serenade! Devil's Daughter shouted in reply, as several chains of searing flames shot out of the ground around the Nira, and lashed around his serpentine body, holding him in place, though leaving an arm free which he levelled at Devil's Daughter, who had her own out, levelled at him. Answer my questions, and I will let you go. Devil's Daughter panted with exhaustion, as Spartaw snarled with similar effort, ignoring the pain of the burning chains. Even if you may not deserve clemency, you fought well, and I now believe the Hodorf may have been right about your actions tonight. The words were out of the vigilante's mouth before she could even think. Surely not, she thought to herself, her mind scattered and unfocused. After everything you have endured, are you really going to just let it all go like that? No, he spat. I will never surrender to one of you, devil spawn. Why the hell do you hate my people so much? Devil's Daughter yelled back at him, now completely losing sight of her discipline and mission, shouting back with years of pain and hurt. You're smart enough to see through the Red Legion's bullshit, and I know the aspirants rejected you. Why? Spartaw still clenched his teeth in defiance, the same look of hatred as before. Damn him! Why? You devil spawn killed my mother! Spartaw growled, embracing the pain as he channeled it into cold discipline and will as his mouth twisted into a vile mask of sheer hatred. Every scar, every torture, every hardship my sister and I have endured lies at your people's feet, and I will have justice! Devil's Daughter's eyes widened in shock as Spartaw summoned a sword and simply sliced through the magical chains holding him. By the gods, how? She thought to herself, as she quickly raised her staff to block, as Spartaw blinked forward and slashed at her head. Her mind was panicking now. That was one of her most powerful spells, and he had somehow torn through it with that blade. She shoved him back and counterattacked, using her power to conjure a blade of hellfire onto the end of her staff to transform it into a glaive. Spartaw blocked it seemingly without effort, as the hellfire crackled and almost recoiled from the nearest blade. The Stygian ducked a swipe at her head, as she quickly tackled the nearer, holding onto his sword arm as she tried to subdue him. Your hatred has consumed you, she desperately called out to Spartaw, who was able to push back with equal magically enhanced strength, clenching in place, as both tried to overpower the other. This won't bring your mother back. You threatened my sister, Spartaw growled, before he was able to scrape a fang into her arm, unleashing his sleeve-ash venom. The Stygian riskily adjusted her arm to move it away from Spartaw's mouth, but even mildly, she felt the effects begin to take hold on her body, as her heart rate began to increase dramatically to dangerous levels, and she knew the effects on her mind would be even worse. She needed to teleport away and get to the Elders. As Spartaw began to overpower her to force a break, Devil's Daughter desperately blinked, taking both of them into the air, only to fall a few meters to break the clinch, the Stygian knowing enough about Spartaw's featherfall to not take them too high for it to take effect. Rolling off, the Warlock quickly got up and cast as she ran, desperate to get off a longer-range teleport, before she yelled in pain, as Spartaw's acid breath got her fully in the back, disrupting the spell. Desperately she turned, and blocked the nasty chop of the nearest sword with her staff. Then again, and again, as Spartaw yelled in blind, furious rage, paying no heed to defense as he attacked with determination. Devil's Daughter felt her arms weaken as they clashed once again, and this time got a proper look at the glowing blue blade. Underneath that and up close, she saw the white metal and gold filigree all along the length, with dark blue script and 2 gleaming sapphires on the pommel. Her mind screamed in recognition. That sword! Svartal broke the clash, and Devil's Daughter raised her staff to block again. If she could just... The sword shimmered, as Svartal spun around for a one-handed swipe. Recognizing the threat too late, Devil's Daughter adjusted her stance. Right before the illusion disappeared, and a lance of pain ripped through her stomach, as Devil's Daughter was run through with the spell-strike sword. Moving to strike back out of sheer instinct, Svartal expertly shuffled back and swiped upwards with the blade, sending a beam of energy that smacked into the Stygian, sending her flying with a fresh, burning pain. Gasping with loud breaths, Devil's Daughter collapsed to the ground and thrust her arm out, desperately trying to regain hold of her staff, which she had dropped. With a word of power, Spartal summoned the staff to him, and away from its owner. As the staff flew to his hand, there was a moment of resistance from the weapon, as burning, scorching lines travelled up the nearest arm, before with an act of will, Spartal resisted the curse, as the lines faded back to the black rod of hellish power. A lot of children were left without parents thanks to your kind, Spartal growled, as Devil's Daughter fought with everything she had to stay conscious. Parents that matter, at least. I do this for them. But first, I know this form is not your own. Let us see who the Devil's Daughter really is. He raised his hands, sword and staff pointing at the Stygian, as they began to grow with power. Desperately, in a final moment of defiance, Devil's Daughter thrust a palm out, sending a blast of force that knocked him back several paces, but not to the ground. Have it your way, then, Svartal sneered with hatred. Scarpinia! In those last moments, Devil's Daughter's eyes turned to desperation, as her hand, smeared in her own blood, drew a desperate sigil on the ground. As all the remaining glass knives flew towards her, she dug deep and called upon her last remaining spark of power. Using the sigil she had quickly drawn, she completed her desperate spell just in time, vanishing just before the hail of knives slammed into nothing. You can't hide from me! Svartal yelled into the night. I will hunt you down! Her vision darkened once again, and once again she held on, not falling yet, not yet dead, but soon to be. Her desperate teleport had thrown her randomly to a nearby place, and she was glad it had not been a place where Svartal could find her. In the complex, dead clowns and dead teenagers all around her. It only reminded her of her failure. How could she have been so stupid? The elders had warned her against such a reckless action, and they had been right. She had let her personal feelings get in the way. Stupid, stupid, stupid. The moment she had an excuse, she had taken it, completely jeopardizing everything they had worked towards. And then she didn't have what it took to see it through. She should have just killed him outright, without words. But instead she wanted to gloat. Then she wanted to fix things after realizing why. Why did she care? He did not deserve mercy, forgiveness, or pity. Nor did he even want it. After all, she had all the reason in the galaxy not to grant it. She stumbled and fell to the ground with a crash, barely registering the pain. What did it matter? It paled in comparison to what had already been inflicted on her. Death was almost welcoming at this point. She barely registered it, as her magical veil dissipated, revealing her true form. There had not been much sleeve ash venom, certainly not enough to kill her outright, but she would be dead long before it would matter. She had lost so much blood, and she was out of power. She thought she heard a noise in the distance, likely a clown. To think she would be finished off by one of them. It was funny in a way. At least people wouldn't know Devil's daughter was dead. There was the noise again. Not even speech. Just a roar of anger on the battlefield. A familiar roar? Closer. Her vision blurring, Devil's daughter crawled forward. To where she did not know. Neither did she know why. The roar again. Words too. She did not recognize them. Her mind wouldn't let her. Yet she found herself moving forward, despite herself. Why? Why not just give up and die in peace with a scrap of dignity? The voice again, along with the sound of gunfire. Footsteps, running closer. Forcing her face up, she saw the blur up ahead. Fighting to stay alive, she tried to make a sound, and didn't know if she even did. She felt the footsteps now, as something rushed closer and closer. Was it death? Oh my god! She heard the strange, accented voice call out. As she looked up to see the familiar face of Jack, staring down at her. Nia!